From the espresso bars of Rome to the laneway cafes of Melbourne, Marzocco is a globally recognised and loved brand. But long before he became their managing director here in Australia, Barry Moore was a devoted customer, placing hundreds of Marzocco coffee machines in the businesses he worked in around the world. Then the opportunity arose to head up business here in Australia. So here he is, growing and reshaping the brand, while also exploring what influence it can wield in the world. Hi, my name's Tom Andronis, and with me is Dave Burchett, and we're very excited to welcome Barry Moore, Managing Director of Marzocco Australia, to the Coffee Lab. Welcome, Barry.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
One of the things I really find interesting about your career is that you're a customer of Marzocco long before you were its MD. So, when did you first meet?
So I first met Marzocco as a machine that was introduced to me by a coffee roaster in London in 1998, which was about 10 years into my career. And the story about the Bambi brothers and the machine that was presented to me to have on the bench in the operation that I was running was pretty compelling. And it was sort of love at first sight.
Yeah, and so, but the machines have sort of followed you around. You've been a lot of different places and done a lot of different things. Why have they sort of always been present for you?
Look, I think as you can hear, I'm from the UK originally, and got introduced to that first machine in '98, and then subsequently came to Australia, where I really fell in love with coffee, and then went back to the UK to start up my own business, and to show that I was, I suppose, really serious about what I was doing, which was sort of high end, high quality food, beverage, and coffee in workplaces. I wanted to make a statement for the business that I was in, and I felt that the Marzocco that I had seen and used previously, I wanted to have on the bench. And subsequently, my journey's taken me from that being in the UK and a business I had for 4 years back to Australia, where I set up the catering for Westpac's corporate HQ in Sydney and put 10 Marzoccos into that building. And then subsequently back to the UK, where I was with my the last business I was working in, and probably put in over 200 machines with that. And,
so it's in the hundreds, the number of machines that you put in.
It's in the hundreds. And the three reasons for me was, that, as I say, the first one, I wanted to sort of show the customers that I cared about the product I was serving.
Yep.
Secondly, baristas, which are always hard to get. They're hard now. They've always been hard to get. Love working on the machines. And the third point was that the machines kind of rarely broke down. But if they did, you could fix them. So those sort of three key points are the ones that I still stay today, are the reasons why I chose a Marzocco as a customer.
So it was the Linear Classic? Was that the model at the time? Or?
Yeah, the Linear Classic. But I had also some, at the time, even secondhand FB80s, FB70s in my business. And, I wasn't making a lot of money in that business, but I was so proud of the Marzoccos that I had on the benches as a key value proposition.
Did you notice a difference from the reaction from the customers when it went on the bench, I suppose, compared to the previous offering that was there? Like, did people go, oh, this looks interesting? Or
well, what's been interesting for me, and a lot of the work that I've done has been in workplaces that could be advertising agencies, law firms, banks, is that there's always a customer that's the real coffee lover and the coffee geek that everybody listens to in the office. And they go, whoa, they've got a Marzocco on the bench. These guys must be serious. And
it's legit.
It's legit.
Yeah.
And then that sort of permeates as a sort of pebble through, people trusting those that are deemed to know about coffee, and as such has always had a great impact.
It's really interesting, the whole, the Marzocco brand, because even you just mentioned that you wanted to show the customers that you were taking pride in what you were doing. This was even back then, but I would say undeniably that if someone has a Marzocco on the bench in their cafe, even the average consumer would know that place is a bit more serious about their coffee now.
Yeah, sorry.
Why do you think that is?
Look, I think it's because the machine, particularly focusing here in Australia, but also globally, where specialty markets have emerged and grown, and they're all at different stages of their journey. But in Australia, where what we call is really the sort of the modern iteration of Australian specialty coffee, about 20, 30 years ago, they sort of started using, those pioneers started using La Marzocco's. And because they were so far away from Italy, the machines had to be reliable in terms of making great espresso consistently, high volume, sometimes in challenging environmental conditions. But also, you needed to have the spare parts and the specialist knowledge. And I wouldn't say if you do a blind tasting of your coffee, your favourite coffee across 3 or 4 different machines, sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference between them, but it's much more about buying the new machine. It's about the machine for the lifetime of the machine. And that's where we've put a lot of effort into making sure here in Australia that we train a lot of technicians who work with lots of different coffee roasters, independent coffee roasters. And then more recently, we've partnered with Brewtech to have what we want is a 360 life cycle view of our machines. So not the beautiful one that leaves our operation in Abbotsford on day 1, but what's happening on day 101 and day 1001. And I think that sort of obsession about serving the industry is something which has meant that people see that we are reliable.
Listening to you talk about coffee machines, it sounds like you're talking about cars.
Well, look, it's there's a great similarity between the two, and certainly I've done quite a lot of study here myself, and on different industries, so both cars and appliances, and kind of where I was staying when I first arrived here in 2018. When I joined the business, was really close to the Porsche dealership in Collingwood, and I went down there and met a great guy called Piero Pellegrini who runs that dealership. And while I was fascinated by how many Porsches were arriving each morning when I go on the morning walk with my wife. But I also saw that there was a service department and there were spare parts, and there looked like there was a lot of work going into the after sale. And, you can buy a new machine, you can buy a second-hand machine, you can buy vintage, and all of those things that would account to a premium car like Porsche, for instance, is exactly the same with La Marzocco.
Yeah. And it feels to me like the way that you speak about it, there's like a nostalgia around it as well. So tell us a little bit about the heritage of La Marzocco for those who may not sort of know the history.
Well, look, it's a business that's nearly coming up for sort of about 97 years, founded by two Bambi brothers. And La Marzocco, actually, was a business and a brand that was only ever intended to serve the city of Florence and surrounding areas.
Well, they failed in that, didn't they?
They sure did. And then, from a chap called Ken Barkey, who was in Seattle, came over to Italy to try and find machines to take back to what was then the emerging specialty scene of coffee in that part of the US. Originally looked in the north, found his way in Florence through a friend of his, got introduced to the Bambi brothers, bought a machine from them. After a couple of years of trying to convince Piero Bambi to sell him that machine, went over to Seattle where he would install and service the machine. And after a period, he had Starbucks come and knock on the door in their very, very early days. And, not many people do know, but, Starbucks used La Marzocco exclusively for a good few years of their initial business model. And that, in turn, helped La Marzocco not only grow as a brand, but also to understand how you support a product from Italy when you're so far away. And just at the time when Starbucks decided not to use La Marzocco anymore was at the same time that in Australia, the emerging coffee market and all of that groundwork that had gone on to make the machines reliable and to take a lot of the innovations and the feedback from a really fast-growing milk-based coffee market really helped us develop products so that when those pioneers of the modern style of coffee here, we had a product ready to go, and we also understood that we were going to be here not just as sales and marketing capacity, but in a way that would support the product more around making sure that technicians could service the machines, repair the machines. I mean, the machines break down; they are like cars, so you do need to have a heightened view. So there's a bit of a journey. There's a lot that I could pack into that 97 years, but that's a very brief understanding of the history.
Well, it's now. I mean, it's a global business now. It's in how many markets in the world?
Over 100.
Right. So pretty big deal now. Yes. But does it still have that kind of family vibe about it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So although Piero, unfortunately, passed away as the last sort of living member of the Bambi family, the current leadership team and have a very intergenerational view on how we make sure that the business is in really, really good hands and is passed through, the generations. And what I found, although I'd had owned La Marzocco's for many, many years and operated with them, I only went to the factory for the first time in 2018. And what struck me was this amazing, as our CEO calls it, Guido, a devotion to our people. And I could see the devotion to our people on the factory floor. I could see it in how they would engage with each other. And when I then came to Australia to sort of have a look at the market here and think about whether this was the right move for me and my family, that passion that I saw on the factory floor in Florence was something that I thought absolutely that's something that would help me and the team here, the already incredible team we had here, to really think about how do we take La Marzocco into the future.
The next level. It's funny that you mentioned the Starbucks machine, because I've been in the coffee industry in Australia for over 15 years, and I worked in the service and equipment industry prior to being in roasting. And I remember those 4-group linears because they were the custom ones. They didn't have a hot water outlet on them.
That's correct.
Because the volume was so big for the demand for steam for the milk. And I remember the time when those machines got changed over. But there's been, La Marzocco seem that they've always innovated in that, one of the first, if not the first, to do the horizontal boiler on a coffee machine, for example. There's been that step function innovation, but it seems like they got it to a certain formula that worked really well for them, and then they're just tweaking it now. Is that sort of how it feels?
Well, look, I think it's the Linear Classic. Although we've just introduced the new sort of 30-year anniversary and introduced a new model. But it's fair to say that the Linear Classic that was launched 30 years ago to the one now has been changed and tweaked. There's an obsession about finding the 1% differences, and by listening to the market and understanding the issues. And again, that after-sale element, and we have an after-sales team that are based at the factory that connect to all of our after-sales managers globally, are always listening and fine-tuning and, obsessed about incremental improvement. And that also then comes with some significant innovation. So although we like to think that we're sort of trusted on a machine that's been around for some time, but on new products like the KB90, where we got the straight-in portafilter, that innovation came about from actually time when we were working with Starbucks, and they were talking about RSI, barista wrist. And Kent Barkey, took a challenge back to the team to say, how do we come in with a straight-in portafilter? Now, that took some 15 years from that initial idea and iterations before we actually only released that in 2019. So there's always a great deal of care and consideration put into when we do launch a product and a new innovation. And then we've got subsequent products that have come out recently, like Wally Milk, and we've also got a grinder program that we've been working on for some time as well. So it sometimes feels there's not that many innovations that come, but when they do come, they generally make quite a big impact in the market.
Well, 97 years of 1%ers is 97%.
That's a lot, isn't it? So it's like the typical, the overnight success.
Yeah.
That takes 20 years to happen.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. I know that, I'm not a coffee person, but I know that there's a lot of talk of automation, in the coffee industry, and it sounds to me from speaking to you, Barry, that La Marzocco is really big on the kind of manual nature of making coffee. Is that fair to say?
Look, it is. It is about understanding the passion and the purpose. Making a great cup of coffee when you're taking super high quality Arabica beans from origin and they go through quite a long journey to get to the roaster. The roaster spends a huge amount of time making sure that they are roasting that product so that it absolutely will be at its best. And then we're standing between that bean and the cup of coffee. And we're the last thing that the coffee touches before it goes into the cup. And there have been lots of these 1%ers. So we do now have, from a machine that was manual to shot timers to now having scales, so you can measure exactly the recipe you want in terms of volumetric. And now with Wally Milk, which is not there to replace the great role that the barista plays and being passionate about the coffee they texture, but it's given for certain environments and certain operations almost this extra half a pair of hands, because now the innovation that's come with milk, for instance, and alternate milks, the barista's not now just texturing one milk, they've sometimes got 5 or 6 options. And we believe the innovation of Wally Milk gives us that, gives the industry something that they need with that. So we absolutely do believe in that. And now we've also got IoT, Internet of Things, into our machines. And we've got a future plan that through, our own professional app and home app on the home machines as well, which is a very important market for us, that we will constantly, again, over time, deliver solutions around technology and automation that we feel are meaningful, but also in the spirit of how the coffee industry likes to deliver their products and how consumers would like to enjoy them.
So do you think that automation and innovation more generally, is it sort of viewed as opportunity or threat, friend or foe?
No, look, I think automation should help you in any business do the heavy lifting to free you up to have higher quality value interactions with your customer. And that's where already, in terms of the automation that we believe we have in our products, is freeing up the barista or the cafe owner to work with that. And look, and different environments have different requirements with that, but we definitely do not see it as a foe. But it's something that we want to be considered around how we see it adding value to the coffee industry.
There's been, since you've joined the business, there's been a lot of diversification with the addition of brew tech and the home products, but the demand for La Marzocco, from what I can see, hasn't subsided. With your team, how do you find it difficult to keep people motivated when there's so much demand, or is it not an issue? Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, is there because there's always a risk there could be almost some complacency, arguably, when there's just such overwhelming demand for a product.
Look, I think the broader global purpose of La Marzocco is that, we're here to enrich the lives of others. And we see our purpose greater than just putting coffee machines into the market. And having deep relationships with all coffee roasters and operators, whether they're setting up on day one for those that have been around for some time, and being seen hopefully as trusted counsel, advisors, and to help people on their journey. All of the team, whether, there isn't one role in our business that's more important than the others. The team that bench test our every single machine that comes into Australia to make sure it's ready to go on a customer's bench in a cafe or a home gives us the confidence to know that we can trust our products. The team that work in spare parts also will make sure that, we've got spare parts critical to keeping cafes up and running in Alice Springs or Broome or any location across Australia, is the kind of hallmark that gives us the confidence in the same way we have the confidence in the machine and the innovation that comes from Italy. And then we've got our team that work in sort of sales and relationship roles, and the marketing team that are really making sure that the messages that we are pushing, that we're considering and sharing, is also celebrating our partners, because we never forget where we come from. And in a similar way, we use the analogy a little bit like the All Blacks, when you sort of pull on the La Marzocco merch, there is a kind of a bit of a responsibility that we all feel. And wanting to make sure that whilst, we're custodians of the brand here, that we are, making sure that we're really keeping a very mindful, humble approach to the industry that we believe we're here to serve. And I think that broader purpose, and also where we lean into a lot of other kind of adjacent organisations and charities that are doing really incredible work to help create pathways for people, often from very, unfortunate personal circumstances, that, that sense of celebrating the industry, celebrating the community that we sit around, gives, I believe, a purpose that I feel coming to work every day, and I believe that also representative across everybody that works across our business.
The organisation I think you've just alluded to, Street Smart. Tell us about La Marzocco's relationship with Street Smart, what it is and why you feel like it's important to support it.
Yeah, well, Street Smart has had a relationship with La Marzocco so way before my time. They are an organisation that is dedicated to help eradicate homelessness. And they've had a couple of campaigns that have been running here for some time. Dine Smart, which is in its 20th year, is actually happening at the moment. And then Cafe Smart, which a number of really fantastic roasters and cafes across Australia get behind during Homelessness Week. And they sort of donate $1 of every coffee on a particular Friday around that. And this year was over $180,000 were raised on a number of initiatives. And they all go to grassroots charities that are helping people from a homeless perspective. And some of those are charities that are doing incredible work around providing pathways for people into the coffee industry. And, last week I was with Youth Projects, who have got a small cafe chain called Little Social, and they'd opened that in the Pride Centre in St Kilda. And it's, really great non-for-profits that are helping people find a journey into not just coffee, but also into hospitality. And with Street Smart working right the way across the coffee industry, as La Marzocco do, where we work with so many different roasters, we just felt it's been a natural collaboration to help elevate their mission. And really, sort of help, hopefully, people to provide a career pathway that can be super fulfilling. From leaving school myself at 16 and not really sure what I wanted to do, but fell into food and then subsequently coffee. It's an incredible industry to be in.
You've just touched on it. Why is it so sort of personally important for you to support these sorts of organisations?
Look, I think, already I could see the amazing work our team were already, and the kick they were getting out of supporting Street Smart. But as I touched on, I think it's really interesting that, the sort of academic system means that you either have to conform down a certain curricula, and if you're a little bit outside of that, they often, even today, don't necessarily make it known to you that there is an amazing career in food, hospitality, coffee, from, being involved in roasting coffee, sourcing coffee. And so from being someone at school, loved sport, but I wasn't particularly academic, finding my way at 16 into starting into catering college, and then went to work in London at Lloyd's of London, which was actually a coffee house that started 300 years before I'd even walked in the door, in the city of London, which is one of the largest insurance markets globally, but had this incredible concept about bringing the underwriters and brokers together to do business over a great cup of coffee. And for me, seeing and being part of a team, and I think hospitality is the ultimate team sport. For me, I got a massive kick out of it. And I think if we can help find pathways for people that may, have not felt they've done particularly well at school compared to, ATAR ratings, etc., but they can find themselves in a really great environment with people that care and will look after them, then they can set themselves up for an amazing career.
So that's one element of higher purpose that that La Marzocco is sort of pursuing. But you also have ideas around the role that coffee can play and hospitality can play in promoting Australia to the world.
Yep.
What did you call it?
Well, it's what I call sort of brand coffee Australia.
Right. Yeah. And what role do you think that has to play?
Well, I think just from my time at Marzocco now and travelling around back to Italy or the UK or talking to my colleagues in other parts of the world, Australia is a country that people do look to as a place that, has got an incredible geography, it's got incredible cities, it's got incredible culture, it's got incredible food, and it has incredible coffee. And the archetypal Australian independent cafe that has a flat white or, a long black or an espresso, sitting with, a certain kind of menu style is something which, when you now talk to people who have travelled to Australia, see that as part of the Australian experience. Mm-hmm. And I believe that, our role, La Marzocco in supporting people delivering that great coffee and hospitality experience wherever they sit, CBDs, beachside cafes, sits, around the part of Tourism Australia. And that's where I believe the broader purpose of what we're here to do, and also to help, I believe, innovate and push the barriers on coffee that other markets look to and aspire to. And, now that we've also got our own World Barista champion in Anthony Douglas here, which I think is just fantastic for the industry. It's, I think our purpose in serving a great cup of coffee goes way beyond our own daily fix of caffeine. I think it has a much broader societal purpose.
What is that? We're pretty used to the cringy crap that Tourism Australia makes, the where the bloody hell are yous and that kind of stuff. What does it look like in your mind's eye?
Look, there are amazing, I've now been privileged to talk to and meet many, many people who crave this great cup of coffee. And you only have to look at, for us, a growing list of world-class sporting teams that are now coming to us and saying, we are so used to great coffee that we are about to go to a country that might not be able to give us what we're used to. So we need to take the La Marzocco with us, and we also want to take our favourite coffee. So we've supported the Australian cricket team out to Pakistan. We've also supported the Wallabies in Florence recently, where they played against Italy. And then we've got, early in the new year, we've actually got a great announcement to make with an AFL team, which I've need to keep slightly under wraps at this stage.
That's exciting.
But they also believe that, having great coffee in a high-performing setting is super important. And COVID, again, where everybody's raised their coffee game, regardless of whether they've got an espresso machine or a pour-over at home, everybody in this country has just gone another level in terms of their interest in coffee.
Absolutely. We say at our workplace, it's the affordable luxury that people won't compromise on. And that's like COVID's shown that to be true. I think with that in mind, the home market's a pretty big area of growth for you guys at the moment. You've got the new linear micro that's been released, which looks fantastic. How important is that as part of your, the part of La Marzocco in Australia moving forward?
Well, I think, Australia and globally, when we released the Mini 2014, it was a bit of an experiment. We weren't really sure how that people would respond to it. COVID certainly gave us a massive shot in the arm. After a number of really great work that had been done by a number of our team across a number of markets, and we were seeing the appetite. Having a great machine at home and having great coffee at home, one, it makes me with two kids a better parent, because I get up and have my ritual of my own little quiet moment of making coffee in the morning before the kids would get up. They're older now, but when they were much younger, it gives me the opportunity to make my wife a beautiful cup of coffee. And it also makes you a great neighbour, because people also want to come around for a brew. So
well, there you go. La Marzocco creates better people. Best marketing line you can possibly have. Makes you all better. Yeah. Hey?
Copyright that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You can have it if you want it. It's all yours.
Thank you.
We are running pretty shy of time, but I wanted to ask you, you've been in this gig now for 3.5 years or so. What does the next 5 look like for you and for La Marzocco?
I think for us the constant commitment for people believing that they're buying a product that sometimes is a big investment, both commercially and at home. And I remember what it was like to buy one for my own business when I wasn't making any money. And our commitment around a brand experience for us, and the brand experience is how do people feel about using any product, is to constantly look at how many more 1%ers can we add to ensuring that when people buy our product, that they know that it's built to last, and we're here to support it for life. And what we would like to do is just to continue the journey of collaborating along with the amazing coffee roasters here in Australia and making accessible great coffee to more people. So I think that's a key purpose for us.
And what role does sustainability and innovation play over the next few years as well?
Look, it's top of our kind of list as an organisation. The planet and how we ensure that we're not only maintaining and doing our own social responsibility around our own footprint to make sure that we would be, as self-sufficient around whether that's producing electric. I've got a new Sydney operation opening in January where we've got obviously fitting solar on as we speak to make that work. But I think more importantly, it's our job as La Marzocco globally. And at the site of our previous factory, we now have Accademia dell'Espresso, which is just outside of Florence. And in that, we've got an incredible program, which is about really looking and embracing how do we keep great coffee growing around the world. And we've got programs and research projects happening around air quality and water at Origin, and we've got one of the sort of largest indoor coffee greenhouses I think outside of Origin, that is really looking to elevate the thought leadership that we all in the industry need to take forward. And if you are happening to head to Italy or Florence, I really do recommend. It is a pretty amazing experience for all senses, and the team there are also roasting coffee and doing coffee classes for the novice right the way through to somebody that might be on their sort of SCA kind of journey. So,
wow,
we've run out of time. I could listen to you talk about coffee machines like cars, all day. But before we wrap up, I just want to ask you the same 3 questions that we ask all of our guests. And the first one is, with the fact that you left school at 16 in mind, if you could go back and give 16-year-old Barry a bit of advice, what would you tell him?
Certainly follow your passion into an industry. Try and find the very best people to work with to give you the principles of not only learning that craft, but just how to show up every day.
Good advice. What's the most important lesson that you've learned over your career to date?
I think I went through a period when I worked at Westpac where I went from managing all of the catering facilities to managing a project. It was a construction project, and I sort of had this role of change and engagement manager, which kind of meant I had to sort of be the person that would help the team that were delivering massive refurbishments to many, many bank branches across Australia as the project team. And then there was the banking retail team on the other side, from the bank manager right the way through to the general manager of the retail bank. And my job was really to make sure that those 2 groups played happily in the sandpit together, and without having anybody reporting to me or any kind of command and control. And it really shifted my mindset that life is much more about influence and how you sort of behave and how you try and lead people to collaborate together. And I think that's really for me one of the most important lessons that I learned in that period.
And if you could start a new business or project, maybe we'll remove the word business, but like if you could start a new project tomorrow, maybe completely outside of coffee or hospitality, what would you do?
That's a great question. It'd have to be in hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you've really got me on that one now. There's always a few ideas brewing away in there.
Yeah.
I haven't had time to think about it yet.
That's okay. It shows you're in the right industry.
It means you're doing your job. Yeah, exactly right. Barry, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time and all the best moving forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barry.